Somehow after the Venezuelan raid, he became very nice. He changed his attitude very much.
It's Ken Harbaugh with the MeidasTouch Network. That was Donald Trump commenting on the attitude of President Petro of Colombia. This is gangsterism from the White House. The Trump regime grabbed Maduro in Venezuela, spirited him out of the country in the dark of night, and they're now telegraphing to other world leaders, some of them democratically elected, that they could be next. It's how the mob operates, and it's our government. I'm not defending Maduro. I am actually glad he's gone, but his regime in Venezuela is still intact. Americans are less safe there now than they were before, per U.S. State Department warnings. And the people of Venezuela are still being violently repressed, albeit by a government that is now friendlier to Trump. That's not the win we were sold. And now we're talking about boots on the ground in Mexico. The New York Times broke the story that the Trump administration has been pressuring the Mexican government to allow U.S. troops to basically wage war inside Mexico against cartels. In part one of my conversation with Kris Goldsmith, Army veteran and founder of Vets Fighting Fascism, we talked about what a terrible idea this would be for most U.S. administrations and what an absolute disaster it'll be if this administration tries it. In part two, we get into some of the historical context. The most successful examples of taking down cartels, and Colombia is a good case study, have been when the U.S. has supported local forces with intel and advisors and financial support. But U.S. boots on the ground, especially in this part of the world with a long memory of American interventionism, is not something anyone should wish for. Here's part two of my conversation with Kris Goldsmith. Our better partners in these parts of the world have actually made great strides. There's certainly some slippage. There's backsliding in certain countries, but the most successful examples of bringing the cartels to heel have come from our enabling with intel and resourcing, not with boots on the ground, their enforcement actions. When you look at the takedowns of the most notorious cartels in history, it hasn't come because we've put troops in those countries. It's come because we've helped them take care of their own.
Yeah, and we all know that Mexico is struggling to handle this problem, and that there are issues of corruption, throughout the Mexican government, that no one is absolved from guilt from these things. But what the difference between the status quo now, which is not perfect, is we are providing intelligence to Mexican military and law enforcement in an observer role, right? We have better assets, better resources than Mexico does. We are helping with command and control. These are active law enforcement operations. What Trump and Hegseth want to do is turn this into an active military operation in the style that we did for nearly 2 decades in both Iraq and Afghanistan, where you have troops on the ground while raids are going on. There is no reason that is necessary. If we have intelligence about the location of a drug factory or a distribution hub, there's no reason that Americans should be on the ground. If we know that it is there, we can provide the Mexican military or law enforcement all of the equipment, all of the intelligence, all of the guidance, all of the training that is necessary. The only thing that putting Americans on the ground in these operations, or using CIA or DoD drones to fire Hellfire missiles, is we ratchet up the heat and we make it so that the United States troops and assets and military families suddenly become targets that are acceptable for in the minds of the cartels to engage.
Well, there's also the historical myopia here, especially relevant to this part of the world, where America has never had a great track record of sending troops in and having them be welcomed or without leaving a trail of destruction and disaster. It seems like the Trump regime is almost proud of ignoring the lessons of history, thinking it can reinvent them, thinking that he's a pan-historical figure that will defy all of the lessons of history, whether it comes to expanding the size of the United States by acquiring Greenland or remaking Gaza into a gilded strip mall, or going back into Latin America and doing regime change there without us falling into the same pits that we've always fallen into in that part of the world.
Yeah. And I can't emphasize this enough, how personal this will be for American military families. The closest example I have is a discovery that I made back between 2016 and 2019 when I was studying foreign hostile actors online targeting troops, veterans, and our families, when I worked for Vietnam Veterans America. In 2019, I published a report, and one of the chapters was about how military families, spouses, were receiving death threats from ISIS, personal death threats to their emails, explicit. The reason was because of their husband. It was gendered, right? Because their husband was overseas in Iraq or Afghanistan. And the media was aware of this. There were several military families that came out and talked about these threats. The FBI investigated it. And the part of the story that most people didn't hear was that it was later revealed that it wasn't ISIS who was threatening those families. It was Russia. And a piece of context that the media didn't get, because they're not like in the veteran advocacy community and they don't understand the context, was it wasn't just random military families that were chosen. It was military families with a platform. It was military families where wives, back when mill blogging was a thing, where wives were published authors, where they had a social media platform. So they weren't just targeting any old military family. The attacks, the threats coming from Russia, made to appear as if it was ISIS, were surgical. They were going after very specific military families. And if anyone thinks for a moment that the cartels in Mexico are not as sophisticated as the Russians were back in 2016, you're wrong, because they are. And the language barrier, the alphabet, like, they have many advantages that the Russians did not have.
It's Ken Harbaugh with a quick break to tell you about something new. Battle Buddies is my latest weekly show where I try to find common ground with a conservative who I consider a true friend, David Bellavia, the only surviving Medal of Honor recipient from the war in Iraq. A Navy vet, an Army vet from opposite ends of the political spectrum, engaging in a civil conversation like we used to have. From the ICE immigration crackdowns to Trump's takeover of Venezuela, David and I take on the toughest issues of the day with genuine respect for each other, in spite of our very different perspectives. They're not always easy conversations, but they're always important, and that's something we need more of. Respectful dialogue between people who disagree, but who have figured out how to stay friends. Check out Battle Buddies today. 2 vets, 2 views, 1 nation. Find us on the Valor Media Network. The link's below. Thanks. Last question. Can you also bring us, and unfair to ask you to do this in 30 seconds, but give us a bit of a primer on the new technologies that enable this, the facial recognition, the AI image generation that can be used to terrorize people. I mean, it's almost democratized now, the ability to identify those who want to keep their identity secret, to create blackmail images, those kinds of things. It's a whole new world.
Sebastian Junger, who I know you know well, he just published something on Substack about how he had a discussion with a military contractor about the future of warfare, what we've learned from Ukraine. And that is that between AI and drones, $40 toys that can be used to assassinate people, the age of warfare that we are entering now is in many ways similar to the Cold War, where we do not have a stomach for the potential violence that could be unleashed with a new hot war, except we don't need a peer nation to oppose us, to have this kind of relative mutually assured destruction, meaning our society would be destroyed from the sense of instability from targeted assassinations against military families, not just politicians, not just people in the military, not just police, but regular people getting gas, having a $40 drone coming up to them with a small explosive and just light up an entire gas station. That is the reality that we're entering right now. And if we want to kick the hornet's nest right at our border, the hornets are here. They're coming fast. So I want to encourage people to go check out Sebastian Junger's Substack. That is an article that is critical for everyone's understanding of what the future of conflict is, and how even if we are the world's only global superpower, Russia's been devastated by their war in Ukraine. It doesn't matter, because an insurgency here in the United States could do unfathomable damage to us. And that is what the Trump administration and Pete Hegseth are trying to provoke.
We'll put the link in the show notes. Thanks, Kris. As always, talk to you soon.
Thanks, brother.
Love this video? Support independent media and unlock exclusive content, ad-free videos, and custom emojis by becoming a paid member of our YouTube channel today. You can also gift memberships to others. Let's keep growing together.